The author's purpose is to illustrate the idea of feeling lost and disconnected in a foreign country. She demonstrates on a larger scale how people from different backgrounds can struggle to communicate and interact with others as they adjust to living a new life in a new country. The narrator's purpose is similar to the author's purpose, however, it is more personal. It is to report her specific experiences of being an immigrant in a new country. The narrator is speaking to someone and continuously telling this person to imagine this life that the narrator has lived as an immigrant for 20+ years. While it is possible that the narrator in the present has returned to her home country and is speaking to someone that inquired about her experience as an immigrant, it is more likely that the narrator still lives in the foreign country and is speaking to a person who has lived there all their life. The reason the two are communicating is likely due to the narratee making the ignorant comment about immigrants, causing a reaction out of the narrator. The narrator feels frustrated and demands empathy from the narratee by telling him to imagine living the life that the narrator lives. Duffy implements references to language in order to portray the idea of being lost in translation. Foreign accent on line 4 indicates the difference that the narrator feels between herself and the non-foreign members of the community. The common language that in that country is foreign to the narrator, yet natural to the people who were born in that country. So when the narrator attempts to speak the language that is new to her, it comes out differently. There is a clear foreign accent. This accent sets her apart from non-foreign people, thus creating an evident divide between the immigrants and the non-foreign members of the community. In line 4 into line 5, Duffy writes, "You think in a language of your own and talk in theirs." This indicates how immigrants generally tend to have a difficult time learning the new language and are constantly having to translate their thoughts from their native language into words that they can speak in the foreign language. In the stanza on line 6, the narrator is writing home, and in line 7, the narrator recites the letter in a local dialect. This further reinforces the idea that immigrants face a conflict of languages because when they return to their place of living, they revert back to their more comfortable native language. This conflict of languages can cause immigrants to go blank and forget how to say words in either languages at times. Duffy demonstrates this in line 10 as she starts crying and says, "What's the word for this?" She goes blank and cannot seem to remember the word for cry in the language of the country she's living in, nor can she remember how to say it in the language of her own country of origin. By including this event, Duffy is trying to make a point of showing how confused immigrants can be in both languages. The effects of immigration can be that you not only are unfamiliar with the new language, but you also become distant and forget your native language. Duffy is showing how disoriented immigrants can feel when having to make such a drastic culture switch. By analyzing Duffy's references to language, not only can we better understand the author's purpose, but we can also gain insight into the narrator's purpose as well, which is to express her discontent and feelings of not belonging in the foreign country, even after 20+ years of living there. The narrator describes herself as having a foreign accent and speaks in a language of her own. The language reference is used to illustrate her surroundings of the city and the lost and disconnectedness she feels. She makes a point to mention that her accent is foreign because she feels like the way she speaks is completely different than the way non-immigrants surrounding her speak. Some immigrants are able to move to a different country and over time are able to speak that new language without a foreign accent. And somehow these people can blend more into society and seem less foreign. The narrator, however, does have an accent. Thus, she stands out and it is clear that she is an outsider. In the second stanza, the narrator is writing home, and in line 6, she recites the letter in a local dialect. This highlights her feeling of being lost from home and the divide between the old country and the new country. When she arrives home and recites the letter in a local dialect because she has read the letter from home so many times, she dearly misses her home. Her language of choice reverts to what she has known all her life because she misses that familiarity of home that she, at this point, is only able to gain through writing to her family and receiving letters back. In the third stanza, the narrator finds a name for herself, sprayed in red against a brick wall. A hate name. References to language occur here, but they have a completely different connotation from the second stanza. In this stanza, the narrator discovers language implemented in a negative way as opposed to a comforting way. This is the portrayal of other people's language, demonstrating that the words said by non-immigrants can be cruel and dehumanizing. This idea of other people's language is carried out again in the fourth stanza, when the coins will not translate, and inarticulate, on line 17. The narrator cannot seem to convert the monetary value of the coins in her hand to a value that she can understand, thus indicating the divide between the two languages, causing confusion in the narrator.
Duffy portrays a contrast between home and the city to display how different the environment is between the two, and to show how much of a different lifestyle immigrants have to adjust to. In the first line, the author indicates that the narrator has lived in a strange, dark city for 20 years, where she feels like an outsider. The words strange and dark refer to the confusion immigrants have about the country they move to and the emptiness they feel as a result of their surroundings. In a city, there are countless people, and she is only one out of those thousands, making her feel insignificant. In line 4 and 5, the narrator says, "You think in a language of your own and talk in theirs." The incorporation of the words own and theirs distinguishes the very difference between the immigrants and the people that occupy the new country. The immigrants feel as though they do not belong and are outsiders because they have to adjust their lives to meet the standards set by non-immigrants. These references to home, contrasting with the vastness and darkness of the city, illustrate the extreme differences between the immigrants have to adjust to. When the narrator is referring to home, she is referring to the country and town she was born in, not her physical apartment or tenant that she currently lives in. The narrator feels more welcome and happier at her old home than in the city, which she now resides. This can be seen from lines 6 through 9. Then you are writing home. The voice in your head recites the letter in a local dialect. Behind that is the sound of your mother singing to you. The singing mother conjures images of childhood and innocence, thus indicating that the narrator misses her previous life as she had during her childhood. As mentioned in line 11, the narrator only works and sleeps. She does not go out to explore the city, nor does she appear to have any friends to spend time with. She is lost in a foreign country, barely understanding the society and language. In line 18, the narrator makes it clear that this place she currently lives in is not welcoming and friendly at all. Her phrase, "because this is not your home," emphasizes the dissatisfaction with living in a place that she does not find homely at all. The narrator includes these references to home, contrasting with her descriptions of the city to indicate her negative personal feelings about the life she has lived.
Duffy tells us that on line 1, the narrator has lived in the foreign country for at least 20 years. However, even after 20 years, the narrator still has not been able to integrate into alternate society. Thus, we as readers understand that immigrants generally do not feel accepted in the foreign country for long periods of time. On line 9, the narrator says that she remembers her mother used to sing to her all that time ago. We understand that the narrator feels security and belongingness when she thinks about living in her home country, which very much contrasts to the way she feels currently as she goes on living in the foreign country. Duffy includes this to emphasize how immigrants will miss the comforts of their original home even after such a long period of time living in the new country. The author includes these references to time because they emphasize her purpose that integration into a new society is a very difficult process. The process, Duffy explains, is so difficult because of the time it requires. The narrator's purpose is different, however. In line 9, when the narrator reminisces about home all that time ago, the narrator indicates that she does not feel a sense of belongingness within the society she now resides. The narrator instead feels security and belongingness when she thinks about living in her country of origin. Even after so much time, she does not adjust. Then, on line 16, in the delicatessen, from time to time, the coins will not translate. The narrator expresses that from time to time, when trying to purchase things, her mind goes blank and she forgets the translated names of the food she is trying to purchase. This shows that even after 20 years, she still has moments where she cannot use language to purchase something as basic as fruit. In addition, there are 20 lines in the entire poem, which is the same number of years that the narrator has been living in the foreign country. A line for every year, yet things are the same and not much has changed over 20 years in terms of her adjusting to her new life in this country. On line 16, the narrator travels to a delicatessen. A delicatessen is just a fancy word for deli. Delis are traditionally known to be a place of sharing and eating food with others. However, the narrator is here by herself. That is until line 19. Another character is introduced to be existing in the same delicatessen with her. One of you says indicates that there is another person in the deli that the narrator must be interacting with, most likely a cashier behind the counter or the person that is selling the food. Symbolically, the delicatessen itself resembles communion because when people eat or drink together, they are sharing a personal experience, but not all communions are necessarily holy. The act of taking food into our bodies is so personal, we only do it with people we are comfortable with. So therefore, when characters cannot eat with each other, it indicates that these characters are not getting along. A failed meal stands for a bad sign. The fact that the narrator is unable to even receive the food indicates that there is tension between her and the cashier, and thus Duffy is suggesting that there is tension between immigrants at large and non-immigrants. Thus, the use of this strategy of communion and eating with others contributes to understanding the author's purpose that immigrants face a difficult challenge as they try to become part of the society of a new country. In line 18, the narrator points at a fruit. The narrator has to point to the food she wants rather than use words to ask for it. She wants something as basic and necessary as food, yet she does not have the basic vocabulary in the foreign language to ask for it. Rather, she has to point at it. This is humiliating and only sets her more apart from the other members of the community. Allusions to the Garden of Eden are also present within this reference to fruit. In the Bible, Adam and Eve were tempted by the apple of sin, which indicates that the narrator is tempted by something here, perhaps the fruit. Perhaps the fruit represents the narrator's hopes and dreams that she had which made her immigrate. However, now that she is here, she can't even achieve it on her own. In the last stanza, when the other character is introduced, this leads to ambiguity. The particular phrase, one of you says, on line 19, leads this part up to a double interpretation. After the narrator fails to receive the fruit, someone makes a comment as a result, but the author does not specify who says the words that follow. Therefore, this phrase could have two different meanings based on who says it. If the narrator says it, then it means she is frustrated with her life in this unfamiliar country. But if the cashier says it, then he is mocking the narrator by purposefully speaking with bad grammar. The fact that the sharing of food is denied and replaced by mockery indicates how difficult it has been for the narrator in this country. The narrator does not have any close friends in this new country and she is not part of the community. Instead, she is oppressed by people occupying it. Through the references to language, contrast between home and city, references to time, and communion symbolism, Duffy illustrates the feelings that immigrants experience in general as they tirelessly attempt to adjust to a new lifestyle. Even with time, immigrants can never completely integrate into society. The narrator chooses to express her personal experience as an immigrant in order to demand empathy from the narratee who provoked her. Whether the narratee is capable of imagining this lifestyle or not, he will never truly understand until experiencing it firsthand.